Well, my job is done. I can go home now. Thank you for being here. My name is Ellen Cassidy, and I'm an enthusiastic, boundlessly grateful Al-Anon. Good morning, my friends. I am so glad you're here. That was so kind. That was such a kind thing. The talks out on the internet have been a source of agitation for me for a while because they didn't ask me if they could put my talks out there. And I should have some control, don't you think? Apparently yet another place I have no control. My friend Sherry and I used to talk about it, and it just really, she was an alcoholic, really made her mad. Sherry tried to get them to take it down. They'd take down one and another one would come up. She said it's like playing whack-a-mole. I know of 3 people who have come into my Monday night 6:15 Addison Al-Anon family group meeting because they heard the talks. And they thought they could go to a meeting where they might know somebody. I don't know where they are today, but at least they came to a meeting, so that's worth it. And for me to have a friend like Judy I don't even know about, and Carol Ann, you know, the gifts are unbelievable, unbelievable. So we're going to do 3 hours today-ish. You'll find out if you don't already know that I don't know any short stories. I only know long stories. But I'm going to do my story first, and then we'll get into, that was a great reading, Carol Ann, because then I thought it was if you're going to hear AA steps all weekend, perhaps you ought to get a little dash of Al-Anon steps. So that's what we'll do for the other 2, under the title of The Gift of Loving. All right, let's get into it. I introduced myself as an Al-Anon, and I want to explain it, which is not necessarily good news, because explaining things is how I got to Al-Anon. I really thought if I could get you to listen long enough, then you'd understand. And then you'd do it my way, and then you'd go, you were right. And we would all be in heaven. But that's not what happened. Yet again. I didn't want to be an Al-Anon. I didn't want to be here when I got here. If you can be something from before you were born, I think from before I was born, what I wanted to be was somebody's wife and somebody's mother. And I was going to be the best wife he ever had, and I was going to be the best mother those children ever had. And then came the disease of alcoholism, and that's not what happened in our home. As it turned out, I ended up being a walking, talking, squawking human bedevilment. And nobody was happy. Most of all me. Got to Al-Anon, didn't want to be here, decided when I'd been here a little while that really what I wanted to be was alcoholic. Well, I had a couple of reasons. Number one, I never want to be here. I always want to be someplace else with somebody else doing something else, because I'm sure it's better over there, which turns out there's no such place as there. Because I get over there and I've just brought all of this over there. All the same stuff I had here is now over there. It was painfully clear to me that alcoholic women had more fun than we did. And besides, apparently my husband preferred them. Well, I'm just reporting, not taking his inventory. Hell, he would have told you the same thing. I believe today there's a difference between being diseasy and being uncomfortable. When I am diseasy, I need a person, place, or thing to get a certain way, and then I'll be okay. All I have to do, if I'm uncomfortable, that has turned out to be a place where I'm sitting in my own seat, in my own skin, breathing my own air, in the moment. Maybe I don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe I'm afraid, but it's made me uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, I've discovered you don't grow in your comfort zone. I only grow in my uncomfortable zone. I only grow when I'm being pulled, when I'm being stretched. That's when I grow. I live a lot of uncomfortable these days. But when I'm uncomfortable, all I need is comforting, and that's why I have you. That's why I have this God of my understanding. That's where my comfort comes from. But that day I wanted to be alcoholic. And really, all I needed to do was look alcoholic. because when I'm diseasy, I just need it to look a different way. Well, I came into Al-Anon. My first meeting was November 3rd of 1981 in gorgeous North Dallas. And there is a look to alcoholic women in gorgeous North Dallas. And I don't own any of those clothes. Didn't then, don't now. The place I decided to do my little experiment was at the Crested Butte Mountain Conference in Crested Butte, Colorado, with 600 of my closest friends, and one of them was an alcoholic woman who said, "Oh, sure, honey, you can wear my clothes." Swell. So I came out that afternoon in my alcoholic outfit. Skin-tight jeans and stiletto heels. I was hot. Made a couple of discoveries in that little experiment. Number one, I don't like anything that tries to control me like those pants did. And number two, apparently Al-Anons are doomed to sensible shoes. We really are built for speed and not for looks. If you love an alcoholic, you've got to be ready to go in a heartbeat, or you could lose him. You might hurt yourself, but that's way down on the list of concerns. Losing him is number one. Well, because God is God and continues to amaze me, there were that week and this was like the early 80s or the middle 80s maybe, there were that week 4 people at that conference who had between them 125 years of Al-Anon, which was a lot of Al-Anon in the mid-80s. And I not only got to hear their stories and sit in meetings with them, I got to visit with them one-on-one, but most importantly, I got to watch their interaction with their families and with us. And I finally knew what it was I wanted to be when I grew up. I still want it. I want to be free. I want to be free to be who it is God would have me be. And I walked away from that conference so grateful that there was such a thing as Al-Anon, and somehow, some way, I had ended up in here. Now, when I got to Al-Anon, I didn't have very many opinions. I either had yours or the opposite of yours, depending on what I wanted you to do. Today, I have some pretty strong opinions, and one of them is about people being called Al-Anon. I still can get the twitch. If some new drunk walks in the room and his wife walks in after him and somebody goes, "Oh, look, there's Bob, the new drunk. And there's Sylvia, his little Al-Anon wife, twitching in behind her," because we do tend to get here with a twitch. She is not an Al-Anon, she's an alligator. Alligators are snappy little people who could use a good Al-Anon meeting, or 100,000 of them, as Father Tom says, but they're not here. Al-Anon is not a program for people who need it. The statistics are, for every alcoholic, there are 1 to 4 people profoundly affected. There are 10 to 42 people directly affected. This meeting ought to be at least 4 times bigger than the Saturday night AA meeting. And it's not a happening thing. I know it's hard to come to AA. Thank God for open AA meetings. I know it's hard to come to AA. I know it's hard. It's even harder to stay. I know that. I've shoved a couple of them in the door myself, but I couldn't get them to stick, you know. But I think it's harder to come to Al-Anon, because it is damn near impossible to ask for help when there's nothing the matter with you. It's the truth. That's right. Girls, listen, Al-Anons, the alcoholics won't laugh at that unless you do. They think we don't know. You have to stay a while before you recognize it. Oh, duh. One more time. I told my sponsor, if you tell me one more time, it's my problem. One more time. Still is my problem. Al-Anon's not a program for people who want it. We get newcomers at just about every one of my meetings in Addison, Texas. And people come to Al-Anon not because they're looking for recovery, they're looking for relief. They're looking for something in this deadly disease of alcoholism. The people who use the insurance first in an alcoholic home are the non-alcoholics. Alcoholics have blessed moments of blackout, not us. We are awake and paying attention. And some of us are taking notes. I was taking notes when I got to Al-Anon. I was taking notes. Not for anybody but myself. he would come home and I'd say, "Oh, there you are. You haven't been home in 3 days. I've missed you. Where have you been? Are you okay?" And he'd go, "What is the matter with you? I was here last night." And I'm sure for a while I knew the truth, but after a while I didn't know the truth. So I started a little notebook and I wrote down every night whether he came home or not, if he came home, what state he was in, if he came home when he passed out. And I didn't keep it for anybody else but me, because I didn't know what was real anymore. Not anymore. Sometimes laughter draws people into Al-Anon, but often it repels them, because alcoholism isn't funny. It's a deadly disease. It kills the people who have it, and it kills the people who love them. Al-Anon is really only a program for people who are willing to work at it, because that's what it requires. Ongoing, persistent effort. Luckily not consistent effort, but persistent effort. Just keep doing it. Somebody said the other day, somebody had said, "Oh, keep coming back." And somebody else said, "Just don't leave. Just stay. Then you don't have to worry about coming back. Just stay." I'm an Al-Anon not because of the people in my life. I'm an Al-Anon because I have a recovery program that I practice like my life depends on it. It begins with the 12 steps, and it continues with the traditions. And now even the concepts. God help us all. Yes! For a while the only one we got was participation is the key to harmony. We got that one. Oh, that was pretty simple. And the one about double-headed management, which is October 10, we got that one because we can do the two-headed thing. Anyway, we're studying them. I'm an Al-Anon because I have a sponsor, and she knows she's my sponsor. I think we need a little checklist in Al-Anon. Number 1, do you have a sponsor? Number 2, does she know she's your sponsor? Because we do this thing about, oh, well, I don't want to bother her. I don't want to bother her. If somebody agreed to be your sponsor, they agreed to be bothered. Let them be in charge of their botherer. It's a great way to learn about boundaries. Pick up the phone and call. That's your job. My sponsor is, she has 55 years in Al-Anon. She celebrated her 90th birthday in May. And I texted her yesterday and I said, blah, 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 blah. But I know God is going to speak with me. And she texted me back and said, yes, if you don't get your tongue in the way. Thank you. I'm an Al-Anon because I have a committed meeting that I go to every week like a doctor's appointment. If you want to find me, you come Monday night at 6:15 to the Addison Al-Anon family group meeting, and that's where I'll be. And when I walk in the door, they go, "Oh, Ellen, there you are." Sometimes they just say it with their eyes. I still can read eyes. That's an old gift. But I know that's what they're saying. I discovered not all that very long ago that I'm getting there earlier and earlier, so I'm one of the ones sitting in the room going, "Oh, there you are," when they walk in the door. I'm an Al-Anon, and I am so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous that there is such a thing as Al-Anon. When I was 17, Mama diagnosed me. Mama diagnosed me as boy crazy. Place Mama sent me to be safe was Lubbock, Texas. The male-to-female ratio at Texas Tech University in 1963 when I went there was 7-to-1, boys to girls. Heaven! She has died and gone to panhandle heaven. Well, she sent me for an education. I went looking for him, because I was always looking for him. I always had a him, because you couldn't be himless. But I mean, look at him. There's another one, I'm sure. This or something better all the time. It took me 6 months to find him, but I found him. I found him. Oh, and it was like, both of us, it was just, I thought it was magic. It's really scary now when I think about it. He was married and had 2 kids and was 60 pounds overweight, but none of that seemed insurmountable to me. I've never wanted the easy ones, you know, the ones who go, "Oh, you're so cute." No, get away. I want the ones you have to fight for, the ones you have to earn, the ones you have to make love you. Well, a year later, I had my little prize. We had shed the wife, the 2 kids, and the 60 pounds, because I'm a total redoer when I get those little fixer-uppers. Lucky me. We were married 6 months when he hit me the first time. He was drunk when he hit me. He was drunk every time he hit me. I did not grow up in a family where adults hit each other, so the reaction I had to that wasn't anything anybody taught me. Thought it up all by myself in my fabulous little solution center here between my ears. The best thing I could think of to do was double dog dare him to do it again. I thought it was a power move. Turns out to be insanity. Didn't take any more insanity on his part to hit me the second time than it did the first time, and that's how we lived. That's how we lived. I can't tell you, as a result of Al-Anon, I can tell you the story of what happened. I suspect, because there's a lot of years I just don't remember. I just don't remember. I was not present for those. But as a result of Al-Anon and being safe enough to look back and getting enough distance to look back, I know today what happened. Every time he hit me, and I believed what he said, which was if I hadn't done what I did, he wouldn't have had to do what he did. Every time he hit me, and I believed what he said, which was I deserved that. Every time he hit me, and I believed what he said, every time I got up the next morning and I looked in the mirror at a black eye or a split lip or a bloody nose, and I said to myself, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I'll just stay in the house another day and another day and another day, and nobody will know. Nobody will know, except maybe the kids. I couldn't avoid their faces when that was going on. Every time that happened, a piece of me left, and another piece, and another piece, and another piece, until after 9 years there was nobody left who could stand up and say, you can't treat me like this. I'm a precious child of God's. Because I'm a sticker. You're going to say, so what made you leave? Where'd you get the power? I bet you could guess. This other guy came along. Yeah. He said, you don't have to live like that, and I love you. Now, plenty of people had said to me, you don't have to live like that, because it was very apparent what was going on. That they hadn't added the magic words. They hadn't told me, I love you. When I got to Al-Anon, I don't think I was much different than most of us are when we come. I think we either come in angry or we come in hurt. And if you come in angry, you're going to have to learn to deal with the hurt. And if you come in hurt, you're going to have to learn to deal with the anger. It's the same issue. It's just whether I'm blowing it out on you or sucking it in on me. I actually think it's probably healthier to be angry, but I was hurt. Everything hurt. It was the only feeling I had was hurt. I got a sponsor when I got to Al-Anon. It's another long story. Just trust me, I got to Al-Anon. And she was an angry woman. Angry woman. And angry people scared me. I thought it was because he was an angry person, but it turns out it wasn't about her anger, it was about my anger. I hadn't allowed myself to be angry in so long. Rageful I could do, but that only with my kids. And anyway, she was my sponsor, and I would tell her what my story, what was going on, the current issue, and she'd say, well, how do you feel? And I'd go, but it just hurts. It just hurts. So she made me go get one of those magnetic signs. Do you remember with the drawings on them? They have little ones now, I've seen them, with the drawings on the faces. So that if you look at the face like there's a face that goes, so if you look in the mirror and if your face is going, then you know you're surprised. So that was the idea. So I'm talking to her on the phone. How do you, the only place I could put it was on the refrigerator. It was the only place big enough to hold the thing. And I'd be talking to her on the phone. She'd say, how do you feel? And I'd say, oh, I don't know. She'd say, go look it up. Well, I have to go to the refrigerator. And I'm just going to tell you, learning to deal with your feelings by going to the refrigerator. We'll send you to a whole nother 12-step program. Thank God for all of them. One day I had a new feeling, and I knew she'd be happy, and I want you to know that people-pleasing saved my life till it started to kill me, like all the rest of those coping skills I had, but people-pleasing saved my life. And I could hardly wait I called her, and I said, oh, I have a new feeling. She said, great, what is it? I said, fear. She said, wow, that's great. What are you afraid of? And I said, well, is that necessary? You actually have to pin it down to something? Because I'm just afraid. You know, because once you let fear out of the closet, it takes over everything. Because I was afraid all the time. And I come from a line of sponsorship that believes you should chase fears to their root cause. Whatever you think it's about is not what it's about. There's something under that, and something under that, and something under that, and you'll know when you reach the bottom. And this sounds like it should have taken, the 3 minutes it'll take me to tell you, but I bet you it took a couple of weeks. She said, okay, what are you afraid of? Well, I was new. This is the early 80s, and treatment centers were coming into their own. And we were getting treatment center jargon in our Al-Anon meetings. And you could hear the old-timers' eyes just flapping their head. They'd say the word issues would make them go, But the one that really fried them was when somebody said, well, I'm dealing with my inner child. Like, where is that in the book? But I said, I know what it is, because I'd heard those people talk. I said, I know what I have. I have fear of abandonment. They gave me the words. I have fear of abandonment. I said, I'm afraid he's going to leave me. She said, really? Why? And I said, well, he said he's going to leave. Really? When is he going? She said. And I said, Friday. He said he's leaving Friday. She said, honey, let me tell you something. The way to tell whether or not an alcoholic is leaving you is if they're gone. She taught me to turn off the sound and look at the picture. She said the sound will confuse you. They mean well, but they can't carry it off. Don't even try to read their lips. Just watch their feet. She said, okay, let's say he leaves you. Now how are you? Well, if he leaves me, I'm going to have to deal with this issue that I have avoided my entire life. Being alone, by myself. And I had 2 little kids. By myself with 2 little kids is a lot of alone. And if I'm alone, what I'm afraid of is I'm going to have to deal with this thing that has been at the back of my head almost all I can remember of my life. And it gets bigger and bigger through the years, but I keep pushing it down and pushing it down. This thing that comes up. But I know what its name is. I know what its name is. It's my biggest fear is I'm going to have to deal with the fact that I'm not enough. I'm not tall enough, pretty enough, young enough, rich enough, old enough, thin enough, good enough, powerful enough. I am not enough. And my fear, when I recognize that is really true, that all of you have got the power and I'm this little piece of poop. God made all these wonderful people and a little piece of poop. It's a little bit of reverse pride, but just a little. Because it's always all about me. I know you've noticed that already. That I'm going to have to recognize the fact that I can't take care of myself. If I'm not enough, I can't take care of myself, and I'm going to die. And when somebody said, I love you to me, what I heard was, I won't leave you. So this one said, you don't have to live like that, and I love you. And I go, oh, got him. Don't need you anymore. Get away. It took me another year to nail him, but I'm like the Mounties. Always get my man. And I knew what I'd done wrong the first time, and I had made a little checklist in my head for number 2 because I knew there was going to be a number 2. I knew what I'd done wrong. And this guy, he was perfect. He was the right height, the right coloring. He always wanted a blonde-headed guy. That was great. And had the right job as long as I worked full-time. He had the right job. And he had a lovely family. They were a little possessive, but they lived over in Fort Worth. We're in Dallas. It's like a whole state away, I can handle that. And I just thought he was just divine. He did have one tiny little flaw. He didn't come home nights. But I'm thinking a couple of home-cooked meals and a little, and I got him. That's the way I marked my territory back in the day, mine. And then came menopause. And now, who cares, really? Listen, if your sponsor says it's okay, enjoy. I just want you to know it's got a shelf life, okay? Everything has a beginning and a middle and an end. Anyhow, So we get married, and for about the first 6 months or so, he comes every night. He comes home every night, so I'm sure I'm doing my job right, because he's coming home every night. And then night came, he didn't come home. I didn't know that I was dealing with a subset of alcoholic that I'd never encountered before, and that's the bar drinking variety. The kind who are as attached to the place and the people in it as they are addicted to the substance alcohol. He didn't come home. And I lay on the floor of the bathroom and I cry because I was pretty sure he'd seen the 2 pounds I gained and he didn't love me anymore, and that's why he wasn't coming home. And then I thought, stupid me. This morning he said, "What's for dinner?" And I said, "Roast beef." Ooh, everybody knows pork chops are his favorite thing. And I made a decision that every time he said, "What's for dinner?" I was always going to say pork chops. And then when he got home, I could tell him the truth after I locked the door. And then I decided what I needed to do was go sit on the sofa and wait. Now, if you're in training for Al-Anon, you must pass waiting 101. And you know you're in waiting 101 if when you're waiting you can do nothing else. You can't talk on the phone, you can't read a book, you can't cook a meal. The kids would come up and they'd go, "Mom," and I'd go, "Shh, I'm waiting." And that's because when I'm waiting, I'm listening, and I'm listening for the sound of those tires. There are 44 bazillion other tires on the planet. I don't care. I could pick mine out in a mall parking lot. And I have the same reaction to the sound of those tires as I've heard an alcoholic say a drink did for them. I'd hear those tires and I'd go, it's all going to be okay. He's home now. It's all going to be okay. Might have to kill him when he walks in the door, but at least he would die at home. And at that point, it was preferable to be a widow than a divorcee. Don't want to do that again. So, well, I've been to enough AA meetings, thank you God, that I know now 99 times out of 100 they come home. It might be that day or the next week or 3 years later, but they come home. And when he came home, I met him at the door like a 3-year-old who's been crying all afternoon, and you've said, "Stop it. Stop it." I was at that place. You know that place? With the big swollen eyes and the snot going everywhere and can't see the next day. And I said, the second stupidest question, "Where have you been?" Stupidest question, of course, is, "Have you been drinking?" Second one is, "Where have you been?" Because here's the deal. There are some of you, maybe not all of you, but some of you in this room who will have the same gift, or curse, depending on how you want to look at it, that I have. I have a head that makes up stories. Totally unbidden, it makes up stories. I don't know their stories because I think they must be the truth, because they're coming right out of my head. Come on. But they're stories. They are never happy stories. There's always suffering in the story, and I'm always the one doing the most suffering. Other people died, but I suffer the most. And I probably had a story in my head that night that sounded something like, "I don't know where he is. Where could he be? I don't know where he is. Well, I know what happened. I know. I just know. He was driving his car out in the country. He was driving his car. I don't know why, but he just was. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, I don't know why, the car has blown up. And it's blown his body into a ditch by the side of the road. And he's really badly hurt. But nobody can see him because he's down in the ditch. Cars are driving by, and he's down in the ditch. And he's dying, but he's not quite dead yet. And with his dying breath, he's calling me. And he's saying, "Ellen, Ellen, I love you." Now, wild animals are coming and tearing off body parts and strewing them in the forest, and it'll be 7 years before we can identify the body. Well, I came to Al-Anon and called that love. They said, "Honey, that's not, no. That's not love. They said, "That's obsession. When you can think it all the way to the place where somebody dies, that's obsession." Obsession is all-out warfare on powerlessness. And the more powerless I feel, the more apt I am to be obsessed. And I can get obsessed about the thing I'm powerless over, but I may not even know what it is. I have the sense, but I haven't nailed it down. I've not been willing. I'm not afraid of those squirrel cage thinking anymore these days because I know the way out and it's numbered. You know, I lived for a long time at step 0, which is that page in the big book that says you can go to the bitter end, blotting out the blah, blah, blah of your consequences, the realities of your consequences, or you can accept spiritual help. And I love that. It doesn't say ask for, it says accept. I'm big on asking for help. I'm not so big on accepting. But that would be the kicker right there. You would have to accept it. So when I asked him where he'd been, really the only answer was in a ditch bleeding. Anything else was going to hurt my feelings. And he said, geez, you have certainly worked yourself up into a state. I don't know why I stay married to you. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. What is the matter with the picture? 3 hours late and drunk, and I'm standing at the door apologizing. Turns out I have an addiction to mind-altering men. Actually, it's not limited to men. Anybody can play with my brain. You don't even have to be present to win. I can just blame it all on you and things go wrong, and there you go. I'm happy. Well, I ended up in Al-Anon. We had been married 6-7 years when I ended up in Al-Anon. And I landed in a group of winners. They say you should stick with the winners. Here's the problem with that. We tend to take turns. Some days I'm a winner, some days you're the winner, and I'm not. But I landed in a nest of Al-Anons who, I was the only one in the Al-Anon meeting who didn't have somebody over on the AA side. So I was a bit of an anomaly back then. They had a routine, and you had to do the routine, which was 2 Al-Anon meetings and 1 open AA meeting every week. So grateful for that. I thought the first step was get in the car. Because they would say, so-and-so is going to do the steps across town on Thursday nights this month, we're all going to go, I'll come by and pick you up. They didn't say, do you want to go? Can you work it into your busy schedule? And people-pleasing saved my life. I wanted you to like me. I wanted somebody to like me. Because I sure didn't. And I'd be on the curb waiting for them when they came. After a couple of months of doing that, I said to my sponsor, I said, you know, I'm leaving my children home alone a lot. She said, well, in your condition, it's probably a good thing. So, 1984, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Been in Al-Anon almost 3 years. I was 38 years old. There's no history of it in my family. Turns out cancer is prevalent in alcoholic homes. There were studies then that said cancer was a stress-related disease. And I was blessed with a doctor who never tried to tell me why I had cancer. He was big on, he'd say, well, I actually don't know what's going to happen next, but he said, whatever happens, you and I are going through it together. And I had gotten a taste of that in Al-Anon, that I wasn't doing this by myself. Yeah, they gave me a 60-40 chance of living another 5 years. I've hung the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is not conference-approved literature in Al-Anon. Do not get me started. Let me just say this. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I understand that because it wasn't written by an Al-Anon, we got to be particular about what we read. However, my first long-term sponsor was Marcy White. She came into program in 1954 in Midland, Texas, and there was no Al-Anon to come into. She walked into open AA meetings with her husband as he tried to get sober. And she loved the way it felt in those rooms, and she wanted what you had. And she said so. And God loved the alcoholic women of the world who have saved her life and mine. They said, come on, Marcy, we'll take you through the steps. And they took her through the steps, the way they went through the steps, which is where the directions are in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's the way she took us through the steps. I had to read it like 42 times before I quit highlighting parts for my mother and turning down corners for him. But on about the 42nd time in there, I went, it's me. I feel like that. I think like that. I've hung my life on a couple of lines out of the big book. One of them is the line in Dr. Paul's story that says, nothing but nothing happens by mistake in God's world. It gave me such a bigger God than the one I had. If God can make miracles come out of whatever happens, whatever horrendous things happen. It's like Mr. Rogers used to say, when there's a calamity, watch for the helpers. They're the angels. They're the message, not the calamity for the angels. And the other one is the last column of the 4-step inventory that says basically what was your part. I read part. I'm pretty sure the word mistake is in there. But if I had read mistake, I wouldn't have done it. I had spent most of my life trying not to make any mistakes. And part was the word, that was the word I needed to know. I needed to know that I have a part in everything that happens in my life. There aren't some places I have a part and other places where I'm helpless victim. I have a part in everything that happens in my life. Even if my part is carrying on something that was done to me when I was a little child and had no, I didn't make that happen, it happened to me. But if I carry that down through the years, my part is to do the work so I can be free. I wanted to know what my part was in the cancer. And what it ended up being was I recognized, after going through the steps again in a step study, I recognized that living in active alcoholism, I will break out in malignancies. I could not handle the stress of it. I couldn't do it. I didn't. We say in our opening that living with an alcoholic is too much for most of us. I always want to say, is there anybody in here that it wasn't too much for? Because you just stand up and tell us how you did it and we'll go home? No, it was too much for all of us. My life is being threatened again. So for the umpteenth time I said it, for the first time I meant it. If you can't stay sober, you can't stay here. You had treated me like my life was valuable. And for the first time, my life was valuable to me. He left. If you ask him why I left, he would tell you it was my crazy daughter, that anybody who had to live with her would drink. She did not make me want to drink. She did make me want to leave home, but she didn't make me want to drink. She was just crazy. She turned crazy in the 8th grade. The same spring that I'm doing chemotherapy, she's doing drugs and alcohol. I didn't know that. I thought she was just turning crazy. She ended up having to leave her high school that she'd gone to with all the friends she'd been with since 1st grade. Some cloud of something happened. And I worked at another school so she could come and graduate from my school. She came as a junior to my school. And she'd been at my school about 3 weeks. And the principal, the head of upper school, called me and he said, you know, there's something the matter with her. Duh. Duh. It was a wonderful school. They said, we're going to send her for an evaluation. 3 days later, the guy calls from the treatment center and he says, oh, Miss Davis, hate to tell you this, but we do believe your daughter's alcoholic. And I said, yes. Yes. He said, we've not had a lot of mothers react like that. I said, oh my God, I thought she was crazy. That's an Al-Anon disease. No sign she'll ever get any help for that. But alcoholic? Yes, yes. She's 17, I can make her do stuff. We talk in Al-Anon about we shouldn't enable our children. I don't believe that we ever enable anybody else. I really and truly don't. I think people are going to do what people are going to do. The person I enable is me. I do for them because I'm afraid of how I'll feel if something bad happens to them. I do it for them. It looks loving and kind. It's not. It's not. It's self-centered like every other fear idea I have. So there's a mom rule, an unwritten mom rule that says you have to do everything for your kid you can do before you can let them go. And here was something I could do. I took her to a place that would force feed the steps because I didn't know any other place to take her. She got sober and stayed sober for about 1.5 years, maybe almost 2 years. She was 17 when she got sober. She was about 1.5 years sober, I guess, or not even that. But anyway, not even that yet. Not quite a year yet. And she started hanging out in slippery places with slippery people. And for the umpteenth time I said it, and for the first time I meant it, because I felt like she was going to drink. And it felt like if she drinks, I'll die, because I can't handle active alcoholism. That was the old idea I was operating under. And so for the umpteenth time I said it, first time I meant it, if you can't go by the rules of this house, you can't stay here. You can't. And I set the deadline to be the day I was going to Crested Butte to be with 600 of my closest friends because I didn't want to kick my daughter out. I love my daughter. I wanted her happy, healthy, home and whole, and she couldn't do any of that. Sure enough, I changed the locks on the door and told her she had to go. So the morning I'm packing my car to go to Crested Butte, she comes in and she throws herself across my bed and she goes, "Mom, you're going to be a grandma." She said later she thought it was a cute way to tell me. I thought she was making me the responsible party again. You're going to be the grandma. And I don't know how long it was ugly, but it was ugly, and it was ugly for a little while before I picked up the phone and called my sponsor and turned myself in. And she said, "Do you want her to stay?" I said, "Oh, honestly, I don't. She's 18 and pregnant, and I don't want her to stay." I said, "I feel terrible. Shouldn't I? That's the clue right there when it's a should. Shoulds are always somebody else's rules, or a rule anyway that I'm living by." And my sponsor would say when I would say should, she'd say, "Whose rule are you playing by, and who's going to punish you if you break it?" Which led me to look at a lot of old ideas that I have carried around and acted from. But anyway, I said, "Shouldn't I want her to stay here?" She said, "Honey, there are only so many bad feelings in every relationship. These are hers. Let her have them. She needs them." She said, "I'll stay on the phone while you tell her." Now, I thought the pain was about letting go. As it turns out, the pain is never about letting go. The pain is always about holding on when it's time to let go. And it was time to let go of her. Of course, I raced up to Crested Butte and raced to my sponsor's condo and threw myself across the bed and cried and cried and cried and cried. But that's what we did. We went through a difficult fall. She told people what a terrible mother I was. She was pregnant and I wouldn't let her live with me. I cornered my friend Buddy Ross, who was a taper. I cornered him behind the table where he couldn't get out one day. And I said, "Buddy, she's pregnant at me now." That's the way it felt. It was at me. And he said, "Oh, honey, I understand." But he said, "You know what? Our son's girlfriend had a baby, and that child has been the light of our lives." I love babies. But it never occurred to me that this was a gift. I had such an old idea about how babies ought to be born and where their parents ought to be and all of that. My journey in Al-Anon has been the journey from yeah, but to thank you. Because I've discovered that yeah, but will kill you. I decided to say thank you for the baby. Thank you for the gift, God, but she still wasn't going to live with me. A couple of months later, she called me and she said, "Hey, Mom, I know you're knitting a blue blanket, but you're going to have to knit faster. I had a sonogram today. It's twin boys." Well, you know alcoholics. If one's good, let's have another, right? What I can tell you is that second baby made all the difference in the world. If she'd have had, because that was what in order, that part. If she'd have had one baby, you'd have probably had another speaker today, but that's not what happened. She had two babies. When the closer we got to delivery time, the more I recognized that if I wanted peace of mind, I had to give it to myself. Nobody else is going to give me peace of mind. And I needed to do what I needed to do for me. And so I told her, I said, "After you have the babies, you can come live with me." Because I would have more peace of mind knowing where those babies were than worrying. She didn't even like dolls. I had no idea at 18 years. She turned 19 3 days before they were born. No idea what she was going to do with those babies. At 5 weeks old, she called me at work and she said, "Hey, Mom, I'm not going to keep them and you can have them if you want them." I'm so grateful that she knew what was coming and she didn't take the babies through it because she was on her way out in a heartbeat. And, you know, if you want to watch an Al-Anon be tortured, just watch us have to make a decision about something. It's like after a meeting, somebody say, "Oh, let's go eat." "Okay, where do you want to go?" "Oh, I don't know. Where do you want to go?" "I don't know. Where do you want to go?" Thank God there are double winners, who come up and go, "Mexican food. We're going for Mexican food." "Oh, yeah, Mexican food. That's great. Off we go." I don't like to think of I don't call them double winners. That's what we call them in our area most of the time. I like to think of them as cross-dressers. Anyway. I didn't know, I wanted babies, but did I want? I didn't want to keep them. I honestly did not. They're the children of two addicts, and I didn't like the odds at all. But I was already in love, and if you haven't been loved by an Al-Anon, you do not know what you're missing. We love at a cellular level, and I loved heartbeats in the hospital before I ever saw them. And my sponsor would say, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't know, I'm so afraid. She'd been telling me for years that God wants for me what I want for me in my heart of hearts. But I'm so afraid to make a decision. What if I pick something this week and then next week something better comes and I can't have it because I picked the stupid thing last week? So I just don't make a decision. She said, she's so sweet. She said, honey, you're confused again. She said, your job is walking in the direction of your dreams. God's job is where you get. And God's promise to you is this or something better. God's not a terrorist waiting around the corner to test your patience. God always wants you happy, joyous, and free. So she gave me power of attorney, and I went to adoption agencies, and I said, I'm looking for a family that wants 2 babies and a grandmother. Because I learned you can't get it if you don't ask. It took 5 months. I had the babies by myself. Me and my son was a rising senior that summer, and we had these 2 babies. And they let me pick the surrender date when we finally found the place, and the surrender date I picked was the day I was going to Crested Butte to be with 600 of my closest friends, because it's the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life up to that point. And so they were 5 months old, and on our way to Crested Butte, on my way to Crested Butte, my son and my daughter went with me, and we took the babies to Lutheran services and handed them over to their new parents. I cried for a year, just devastated. And yet, this family, we'd made an agreement that they would let me see the boys. So they forgot the first month because they were a little overwhelmed with 2 babies. But the next month, they called. And every month after that, we had a lunch date. I would meet them. They lived 75 miles north of us. Melissa thought maybe alcoholism wouldn't find them there. And we would meet for lunch. They came to my house for Christmas. They came to my house for Easter. When they were like 8, 9, and 10, and 11, they came and spent 3 days at Grandma's house with me in the summer. And it was everything I could possibly ask for. The boys were 2 years old, 18 months old, when their parents adopted a little girl. And they said, she doesn't have a grandmother. So I not only got to keep my boys, I got a granddaughter in the mix. Things were rocked along pretty well until high school, and then things started getting a little weird in high school. They went to their first public school in high school, and the ink wasn't dry on their graduation papers before they hightailed it to Dallas. That's where they wanted to be, in the big city where the action was. And when the older twin, by 30 seconds, Anthony, he was like 19, and he was saying, I don't understand about Melissa drinking in the 8th grade. He said, man, I don't get that. He said, I didn't have my first drink till graduation night. And he said, I got beer in my refrigerator at home. He said, I can take it or leave it. 5 years later, or 4 years later, he was a convicted felon in prison, and he had 5 alcohol-related incidents. One of them was walking drunk in downtown Dallas. How drunk do you have to be picked up by the Segway cops, for heaven's sake? I just can't even get a picture of that. I can't even imagine. But anyway, when they were, and we saw a lot of them. When they were 25, and in the summer he was 25. The younger twin, Cameron, said to me, he said, Grandma, I think I'm going to stop drinking. It's getting in my way. He couldn't hold a job. He had to live in a room, somebody's room, someplace, and drinking was huge. In October of 2013, Cameron killed himself driving drunk in a one-vehicle accident. Alcoholism leaves mourners in its wake. That's a line out of one of our books. Melissa stayed sober for about almost 20 years. My daughter was adopted, and we don't have any medical background on her, so a while back, they did a DNA thing on her. She called me up. She said, "You're not going to believe this. I am not at risk for anything. I only have markers for one thing. There are two possible markers. I have them both. It's alcoholism. There's nothing I could have been but alcoholism." And the link on that page, if it said, if you have one or more of these markers, you may want to contact these people, was AA World Service in New York. She said, how did God know to put me in a family that would know about alcoholism? I can't tell you where she slipped. I can only tell you where she fell. And she ended up with breast cancer at 39. Not blood-related, but somehow stress-related. And when she did reconstructive surgery, she always had a very low tolerance for pain, a very high tolerance for drugs. And she was afraid nobody would give her the pain pills, so she dosed herself. I think pain pills are excellent. But I'm not sure that's where she slipped. I'm not sure. I don't know if it didn't happen. I don't know. But that's what was visible. And excuse me, I don't know if I'm freezing or allergic. But anyway, she ended up doing prescription pills. Coming to AA, AA was her life. AA was her life. When Cameron died, Melissa went over the cliff. She had married young and had two little boys. After the twins, she had two boys. And they divorced, and she remarried a guy in AA, and they'd been trudging the road until I don't know until when, but it had gone south. It had gone south. And he evicted her and the boys in the 1st of October, and then Cameron died on the 20th. Melissa was a mess. She was just a mess. And after that happened, she went over the edge. One more time, I got to do everything for my kid. Even if she's 45, I got to do everything for my kid I can think of. And we'd never put her actually into treatment, so we put her into treatment. And they told us there that people with long-term sobriety who have a slip have a very small chance of ever having long-term sobriety again. And the future was not bright for her, especially because she had the yeah buts. The yeah buts. And it's hard I don't know how to tell this story because I can't keep it in line anymore. But I'm just going to tell you what happened to Melissa. So what happened to my precious girl was in the summer of 2013, before Cameron died, my number 3 husband, which I have to tell you about because he was prince of all princes, he said, "I think we better go get the boys," because it was very obvious it was horrible out there. So we went and got her 2 boys, and they were 13 and 15, to come live with us. And so Melissa was pretty much on her own. She had 2 degrees, couldn't hold a job, the house she was living in, the ceiling was falling in, and she was just a mess. She was a mess. And apparently the cancer came back. We didn't see a whole lot of her because she knew she didn't want the boys to see her like she was. But occasionally I would hear from her, and I'd hear from her friends who would call me and say, "Do you know this is going on?" I'd go, "No, I had no idea that was going on." The cancer came back. She had no way to deal with it. AA and Al-Anon give us ways to live. It's a way of life. Part of life is dying. None of us are getting out of here alive. Melissa had no way to deal with what was going on in her life. And apparently, in January of 2017, she must have gotten a phone call from a doctor who told her that the cancer was everywhere, and it was just a matter of months. She was 47. And on the 14th of January of 2017, she took her own life. She had tried to drink herself to death. She tried to take enough drugs, couldn't do it. And I do not begrudge her 1 second. Not 1 second of that. She must have been in pain I can't even imagine. I've lived my life since that day so grateful that I got to be Melissa Thomas's mom. All the things God had to move to make that happen. I am so grateful I got to be her mom. And I got to be her mom her whole life. She was 3 days old when I got her. I know what the best day was in her life because she called me. She called me. She said, "Mom, this is the best day of my life." Her group was having a gratitude workshop that they did every year. They had a speaker come from out of town, and they had Scott Redmond doing the steps. She's sitting right in the middle of you. She is exactly where she belongs. She said, "This is the best day of my life." And I can only imagine what that worst day was like. I want you to know that ever since then, there isn't a week that goes by that somebody doesn't come to me. "Oh, you're kidding, right? Okay." That somebody doesn't come to me and say, "Can I tell you what Melissa did for me when I was new sober? I wouldn't be here today if she hadn't done for me like she did." Happened just last Saturday. A lady came to me to tell me that. Every time that happens, I know there's a light of Melissa's that lives there, and another light that lives there, and another light, and she's everywhere. She's everywhere. Her boys still live with me. They are 20 and almost 22 now. I'm 74. I got just a few minutes, and then I want to tell you about my husband, number 3. And I want you to, well, I'm not going to tell you that. Anyway, so after the boys left, I decided I was going to have to stop dating. And it wasn't like I had to go to the front steps and say, "Sorry, boys, I've sworn off." There was nobody there, because God does for me what I can't do for me. And I decided if I'm not going to hang out with the guys, I'm going to have to hang out with the girls. It is not my favorite thing. Love you. You're beautiful. Really, all of you. Gorgeous. I'm a girl. But I don't do girl things. I don't like girl things. This whole idea of, "Oh, let's go shopping." I get it out of a catalog. They'll say, "Oh, where'd you get that?" Catalog. Catalog. That's me. So the girls, I'd say, "Okay, girls, I'm going to a conference this weekend. I got my big car. You can bring, if you got to have 9 pairs of shoes for a 3-day weekend, bring the shoes." Me, I bought 3 pairs of shoes for this. I'm fine with the 3 pairs of shoes. I said, "Okay," and every time we see a bathroom, we'll stop. I think I could get to Kansas, on my little bladder, but women, you drive in the car with them, and they go, "Oh, there's a bathroom, do I?" "Yes, I do. Pull in. Minute ago, just fine. Now gotta go." But the biggest concession I made was every time we pass a Walmart, we'll go in. Walmart overwhelms me. I don't know where to put your eyes to be safe in there. There's too much stuff. But I want you to know I was healed in a Walmart in Dalhart, Texas, where the whole town smells like cow slaughter. On aisle 12, I remember it like it was yesterday. They had $5 bathing suits. We got to laughing about those $5 bathing suits till I thought they'd have to call for cleanup on aisle 12. I thought the bathing suits would be like communion wafers. For $5 you put them on and they dissolve in water. I made a discovery. God speaks to me in the language I understand best, and the language I understand best is another woman. So then this other guy came along, and I wasn't going to, he was an experiment. He was not in the program, and I knew I wasn't going to get involved with somebody not in the program because I know about that. Been there, done that, got all those T-shirts. Don't need any more. But he was a guy I knew from work, and he was the funniest man alive, so I thought he would be a funny experiment, We dated for 5 years. As you know, that is not my forte, but we dated. The whole first year we dated, our entire physical contact was he'd walk me up to my door after a date, and he'd go, "See ya." Call my sponsor, "Something is desperately the matter with one of us." She said it to me for 5 years, "Are you having a good time?" And I could hear myself go, yeah, but. He doesn't want what I want. Are you in this because you want what he wants, or is this about figuring out what you want and being who you are in this relationship? Regardless. And in November of 1992, we got married. My sponsor married us. And people said, "Oh, look, you got a normal guy." Oh, no. Normal is somebody whose story you haven't heard yet. And you could tell, looking at him, he had an issue. And I need a guy with an issue. I need somebody with something I can work on in my times of trouble. And 2 years later, because he had to hang out with you because you're my people. 2 years later, he walked up to a podium and said he was an alcoholic and took a chip and never drank again. I couldn't have dreamed of the relationship I had with Dick. Could not have dreamed, never in my wildest imagination did I know something like that was even available to me. We were married for 25 years, and in September of 2013, the month before of 2016, September of 2016, Anthony, the oldest twin, went off to prison, 4 DWIs now, off to prison, and they did judicial treatment, to see if he can catch alcoholism in the prison. In October of 2016, Dick was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia and given 4 to 6 months. And then in January, Melissa died. And then 3.5 weeks after she died, Dick died. Yeah. When Dick died, he was in hospice at Presbyterian Hospital, and that was the place I picked because they had 24-hour-a-day visiting, and there was somebody with him 24 hours a day. He was in 3 12-step programs by the time he died. That was the gift of my family. And I have people who come to me and say, God, I loved sitting in meetings with Dick Cassidy. He was funny, and he always made you feel like you were special. I am so grateful that after kissing all the frogs that I got to the prince. I'm so grateful that I got to be Dick Cassidy's wife. I'm going to tell you the rest of it this afternoon, or later on. I don't know when the hell. Whenever Jimmy says go, I'll go. I used to think that when I died and went to heaven, God was going to say, pull out the VCR and the tape, and I want to see how her husband and her children turned out. And if they turned out to be fine, upstanding members of the community, she's earned her way into heaven and she can come in. I'm so grateful you let me find another God. I don't know what's going to happen when my little body gets tired of doing whatever it is it's doing here. And that little part of me of God's is finally free. But I have a story. And my sponsor says I can keep the story. I think when that happens, that little part of me that's always been God's is going to go to God. And when I get there, God is going to go, oh, Ellen, there you are. He's going to say, you know what, precious, heaven's heaven when you're not here, but it's just not perfect without you. And he's going to say, I've been running a little experiment. It really wasn't a test. It was just an experiment. And I know you've been paying close attention, so I'd like your opinion on how it's going. Maybe when you get to heaven, he'll want yours, but he may still be busy with me. Anyway, the first question I know he's going to answer me is, did you have a good time? Did you have a good time? There's no reason for flowers to be different colors, except I thought it'd make you smile. And I knew you'd love babies. So I hope you didn't miss any. 5 weeks to the day after Dick died. Our great-grandson, Mason Taylor Rodriguez, was born, and I got another baby. He's going to say, Ellen, were you Ellen? You know I had jobs to do that only you could do for me. And that question scared me because I was afraid I'd spent so much of my life trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be that I didn't know if I'd been me. So I do a written inventory at night, and for a couple of years my inventory, one of the lines in my inventory was, today, Ellen. And I wrote down the one thing I did that day that I knew for a fact when I was doing it was mine to do. This was mine to do today. You could have had another person today and probably be out of here already, but that's not what happened. We're here, and we're coming back. How can she have more to say? Oh, she does. I looked at that stuff after a couple of years, and 95% of it was what you'd call service work. I knew when I was doing service work, I was exactly where God would have me be. And the last thing he's going to say is, precious, did you ever get the joke? I got the joke the year of cancer. I got the joke standing at the back door of my house. I was in like 3 chemo treatments, so all of the hair on my body was gone, except the 6 gray hairs that I had at the time, which it never occurred to me to cut them. They were all the hair I had, so I kept them. They just looked like fried nerve endings, so I wore a little hat so I wouldn't offend you with my nerve endings. And I was getting ready to go out, and I looked down and realized I was going to have to go back and shave my legs. Really? All the hair? Really? Except? Really? Funny boy, God, funny boy. Well, I laughed. That was the moment I started laughing, and I laughed till I cried. I hadn't laughed like that in I don't know when. But I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed. And all of a sudden I realized that how was I right that second? Right that second. I was okay. Right that second, nothing bad was happening to me. Right that second, I had everything I needed. I've come to know that God prepares me for everything that happens in my life. When I get there, I will have what I need to be there. Maybe all I'll have is the ability to hold up my hand and ask for help, but that may be all I need. God has always prepared me. But I almost missed now because I'm so afraid I'm not going to get something I think I need to get so I'll be okay. So afraid I'm going to lose something I think I need to hold on to so I can be okay that I missed. It's all here. There's nothing missing. Everything is here. There's a guy in our group that says the glass isn't half full or half empty, the glass is just too big. There's another guy that said the glass is either half full or half empty, depending on whether you're drinking or pouring. The magic is when I stand up here and pour, I'm the one whose cup overflows, and I thank you.
Oh, geez.